Tonight's episode brings together a series of encounters that defy easy explanation. Different places, different witnesses, but each story shares the same unsettling thread. Ordinary moments interrupted by something unexpected, leaving behind questions that still have no clear answers. Welcome to Strange Encounters. In the quiet woods of Kangaskylä, Finland, on February 5, 1971, two young men, P. Aliranta and E.J. Sneck, were working in deep snow, felling timber beneath a pale winter sky. The forest was still, the kind of silence that makes every sound echo, when Aliranta noticed something unusual far off, a metallic object about 15 feet across, descending into a small clearing roughly 50 feet away. Its shape was strange, like two saucers pressed together, resting on four thin, spindly legs that touched the snow with a delicate precision. As they watched, a small humanoid emerged from an opening on the underside of the craft. It stood less than 3 feet tall and moved gracefully across the snow in a way that almost seemed to glide. The being wore a green one-piece suit, smooth and unbroken, and a helmet with a circular faceplate that reflected the diffuse winter light. Inside the craft, through 3 upper windows, movement hinted at additional figures, at least 3 more beings observing the scene. The creature walked toward the men. Startled but cautious, Aliranta picked up his motor saw, ready to defend himself. Yet the being did not attack. It simply continued forward, an eerie calm radiating from its small form. Then, as if sensing the human's approach, it retreated slightly, rising into the air beneath the craft's opening. In a sudden impulse, Aliranta reached out and grabbed its boot with his bare hand. Instantly, he felt a scorching heat, forcing him to release it immediately. Remarkably, the burn mark remained visible on his hand for 2 months, a tangible trace of the encounter. Almost at once, the craft lifted off the snow. It hovered briefly, then ascended silently at first, followed by a faint buzzing hum as it disappeared into the pale sky. Both men experienced an unusual stiffness throughout their bodies, a sensation that made movement difficult, as though the cold had combined with some unseen force. On the forest floor were clear physical traces, 4 impressions from the landing legs, and a set of tiny footprints leading up to the craft, then vanishing abruptly. The Kinnula case is historically significant in UFO research. Close encounters involving direct contact with entities and physical traces are extremely rare, and in Finland, this incident stands as one of the few well-documented Type BA sightings. Investigators from the Interplanetarians Association of Helsinki, including Tapani Kuningas, recorded detailed observations of the craft, the humanoids, and the physiological effects on the witnesses, preserving this remarkable encounter for posterity. From a critical perspective, several explanations have been proposed. Skeptics suggest the craft might have been a misidentified mechanical object, perhaps a research prototype, or even a naturally snow-covered shape creating an illusion. Psychological factors are also considered. 2 men alone in a silent, snow-laden forest, under stress and adrenaline, could perceive ambiguous shapes as humanoid figures. Yet the physical evidence, the burn, the footprints, and the landing marks challenges simple dismissal. For ufologists, the case fits a broader pattern of European humanoid sightings, smaller beings in protective suits emerging from unusual craft, leaving physical traces and affecting witnesses physiologically. This combination of observation, interaction, and evidence makes Kinnula one of the most intriguing and puzzling encounters of the era. Even today, the vision of that helmeted figure gliding across the snow, otherworldly and enigmatic, continues to provoke questions that linger like the deep Finnish winter. Questions about who or what truly visits our world. On the night of May 13, 1954, a British naval officer named Commander Horatio Penrose was driving home through Derbyshire. It was late, around 11:30, and Penrose was traveling the road between Derby and Burton when something unusual appeared ahead of his car. A bright light emerged in the distance, positioned directly in his path. As he continued forward, the light appeared to move toward him, growing brighter as it closed the distance. According to Penrose, the moment the light reached his position, he experienced what felt like a sudden crash. He was thrown forward against the windshield as though his car had struck something solid, but instead of stopping, the vehicle seemed to lift from the road. Penrose later reported the sensation of moving through the air, with a powerful light positioned directly above his car. He said the vehicle was no longer in contact with the ground. The next thing he remembered was the car coming to rest atop iron railings, which had been bent or knocked down beneath it. Before he could fully understand what was happening, Penrose claimed he was lifted out of the vehicle by a man wearing a one-piece suit. He described the figure as effortlessly strong. He was then taken upward into an opening on the underside of a large, round object hovering above him, radiating an intense white light. Inside, Penrose said he was brought into a room containing unfamiliar controls. He reported seeing both men and women present, all wearing similar one-piece suits. During this time, he believed he was questioned, not aloud but mentally, about his background, particularly his experience in the Royal Navy and his work with radar systems. At some point, Penrose recalled a woman approaching him and injecting a green fluid into his arm. After that, his memory stopped. The next confirmed events occurred back on the ground. Penrose was discovered in his car, suffering from concussion, with the vehicle still lodged atop damaged iron railings. He was taken to the hospital for treatment. Following his recovery, Penrose returned to the location of the incident. There, he managed to locate a railway signalman who had been on duty that night. The signalman told him he had seen a car pass his signal box with an extremely bright light positioned above it, a detail that closely matched Penrose's own account. Plans were reportedly made for hypnotic regression to explore what Penrose might recall under hypnosis, with the case later associated with investigator Hans Holzer. However, no published regression results are known to exist. The encounter was later cataloged by UFO investigators and published in Flying Saucer Review, becoming one of the earliest British cases to describe close contact with apparent occupants. Whether Commander Horatio Penrose experienced an extraordinary external event, an altered state following a serious accident, or something still unexplained, his account remains a striking and unusual report from the early years of the modern UFO era. In February 1974, in Pulaski, Tennessee, a man named David Swanner reported an experience that would place him among the earliest alleged contactees of the decade. The primary account comes from Stanley Ingram, a local journalist writing for the Pulaski Citizen, who documented Swanner's story in his Moment of Truth column in mid-February of that year. Swanner described a series of unusual events, beginning with a strange sight in his backyard. He claimed to see a luminous object hovering near the ground, roughly 6 feet above his garden. The craft, he said, resembled a wooden shoe with a translucent dome on top, softly glowing with an otherworldly light. Inside the dome, He reported seeing small humanoid figures, their features faint but distinctly human-like, watching him from within. The object emitted a low buzzing sound, which abruptly ceased before it silently departed. A few days later, Swanner's account took an even more extraordinary turn. He claimed the beings returned and, in a narrative that would later echo in other 1970s contactee reports, he was invited to board their craft. According to his account, he was taken on a flight that spanned remarkable distances, reportedly over the Hawaiian Islands and as far as San Francisco, before being returned home. The duration, he claimed, was about 45 minutes. The beings themselves, as Swanner described, were smaller than average humans, roughly 4 to 5 feet tall, with elongated foreheads and pointed chins, small facial features, and eyes that conveyed a sense of intelligence and awareness. He recalled that they spoke of their long lifespans ranging from 125 to 175 years, and imparted warnings that he felt were intended for humanity. Though the details of these warnings remained vague, Swanner reportedly maintained that he possessed evidence of the encounter, though it was never disclosed publicly. This story sits firmly within the context of 1970s contactee phenomena, a period when many Americans reported face-to-face encounters with humanoid extraterrestrials. The timing is notable, coming just after a wave of 1960s UFO sightings and abduction stories, and during a decade when popular media and UFO literature began amplifying these narratives. From a skeptical perspective, there are several points to consider. The primary source is a newspaper column, not a peer-reviewed investigation. Swanner's claims were anecdotal, with no publicly verified physical evidence or corroborating witnesses. The descriptions, small humanoid figures, luminous craft, and rapid, distant travel, match common motifs found in other contactee reports of the era, which suggests they may be influenced by cultural narratives circulating at the time. Yet, even with these critical considerations, Swanner's account is historically significant. It offers a contemporary window into mid-1970s UFO lore in rural Tennessee, capturing the language, perceptions, and experiences of a community engaging with the unknown. Stories like this help us trace the evolution of reported alien encounters and provide insight into how people interpreted extraordinary events before the era of widespread media and internet sharing. Whether one regards Swanner as a witness of an unexplained phenomenon, a participant in a shared cultural narrative, or a combination of both, his story remains a compelling fragment of UFO history, documented, contemporary, and preserved in local reporting for future generations to examine. On the evening of September 23, 1996, in the rural countryside of Fife, Scotland, an ordinary errand turned into one of the most unsettling close encounter reports to come out of the United Kingdom in the 1990s. Just after 8 o'clock, a woman we will call Mary Morrison, her 10-year-old son Peter, and her friend Jane left their farmhouse to drive to a nearby town. They had run out of coffee, and the trip was meant to be quick and uneventful. Instead, within minutes of setting off, all three noticed something unusual in the sky ahead of them. Hovering low in the distance was an intensely bright white light, completely stationary. At first, Mary assumed it was an aircraft or possibly a helicopter. But within seconds, the light split cleanly into two separate sources. Curious and confused, they pulled the car over and stepped outside. What they saw next immediately ruled out anything familiar. Powerful beams of light appeared to shine downward, illuminating the ground near a line of trees as if a massive searchlight were sweeping the area. Then, silhouetted against the glow, the witnesses described a huge black triangular object fitted with several red lights along its underside. It made no obvious sound. After a short time, the object slowly drifted away and vanished into the night. Shaken but still needing supplies, the group continued onto the town. On the return journey, they encountered the object again. This time, it appeared to move rapidly toward their car. Peter became frightened and began to cry. According to Mary and Jane, as soon as the child became visibly distressed, the object abruptly changed direction and sped away. Back at home, the women told Jane's teenage daughter Susan what they had seen. Susan was skeptical and initially dismissed the story as a joke. Eventually, however, curiosity got the better of her, and she agreed to join them if they returned to the area to see whether anything unusual was still happening. Later that night, the four of them drove back toward the original location. As they approached a narrow country road near the trees, they saw a tremendously bright white light on the ground, accompanied by an immense blue glow shining upward through the branches. The blue light appeared to rotate or spin, projecting moving beams between the trunks like something mechanical rather than natural. They turned down a winding side road to get closer. As they did, additional red and green lights joined the blue, creating a display Mary later compared to a laser light show. She described feeling overwhelmed by the sight and unexpectedly moved to tears. While watching the lights, Mary suddenly became aware of movement within the illuminated woods. She described seeing small gray figures running back and forth, apparently busy, as if engaged in some kind of task. According to her account, these figures appeared to be carrying objects resembling boxes, cubes, and cylindrical containers. Further back among the trees, Mary noticed a darker, triangular structure. The small figures seemed to move to and from this shape. Standing apart from them was a much larger figure, described as tan or brown in color. Unlike the others, this being appeared to observe rather than work, as though overseeing the activity. At one point, Mary said the larger figure bent down, opened its right hand toward the ground, then straightened and retreated toward the trees. Above the scene, the witnesses noticed hundreds of small star-like points of light hanging unusually low in the sky. Moments later, a powerful beam suddenly shone down from above, lighting up the road directly in front of their car. Startled and frightened, all four jumped back inside and sped away. They regrouped at Jane's house and told her husband what had happened. Although he had to leave for work, he offered them binoculars if they decided to go back out again. Despite their fear, curiosity once more outweighed caution. On their next outing that same night, they again observed clusters of low-hanging star-like lights and an intensely bright white light near a transmitter tower that flashed in a repeating sequence of 3. Farther along the road, they saw an object described as resembling a squashed ball, elongated vertically, glowing a fiery orange color with irregular indentations. Mary later said it appeared to shimmer. Soon after, the witnesses once again saw small figures in the woods. This time, however, the encounter took a far more alarming turn. A blue mist began to flow out from the trees toward the road. Within this glowing mist, Mary said she could see several small gray figures not walking, but being carried or propelled forward. That was enough. The group fled in terror. As they drove away, Susan looked back through the rear window and saw a tremendous burst of intense blue light, so bright it illuminated the surrounding fields like daylight. She also claimed the bales of straw in a nearby field appeared to shift or move. Just before they disappeared down the road, Susan shouted that one of the figures was standing and grinning at her. In the days and weeks that followed, the incident did not simply fade away. During an investigation conducted by Strange Phenomena Investigations, it was discovered that all the adult witnesses had unexplained marks on their bodies. Jane found 2 discolored areas, one on her right buttock and another beneath her right breast. Susan later discovered a 4-inch long mark on her right shoulder that appeared roughly a week after the sighting. Only Peter showed no physical marks. Even more unsettling were the events reported weeks later. On October 20th, Peter and a visiting friend both claimed to see a small white being outside a bedroom window. That same night, Peter reportedly encountered a similar figure inside the bathroom. Terrified, he screamed until his mother came running. The figure vanished before she arrived, but Peter was so frightened that Mary slept beside him with the light on. SPI investigators contacted local airports, police, and the Ministry of Defense. The official response from the MOD stated that 2 tornado jets were conducting nighttime, low-level training in the Fife area that evening, and that no sightings had been logged. Investigators and witnesses alike expressed doubt that military aircraft could account for the reported figures, lights, and close-range activity. Historically, the Fife incident stands out as one of the most detailed, multi-witness close encounter reports in modern British UFO history. Its combination of repeated sightings, humanoid descriptions, and reported physical effects places it among the most controversial cases of the late 20th century. From a critical perspective, skeptics point to the absence of physical evidence and the powerful role that fear, suggestion, and environmental factors can play during prolonged nighttime events. Military activity and unfamiliar aircraft may explain some elements, but not all. Whether viewed as an extraordinary close encounter or a deeply unsettling misinterpretation, the Fife incident remains unresolved. Nearly 3 decades later, it still raises the same question faced by the witnesses that night in rural Scotland. If this was not something extraordinary, then what exactly did they see? They say some places have eyes, others have secrets. But in the winter of 1964, the market town of Warminster, tucked into the rolling fields of Wiltshire, England, found itself at the center of a mystery that would blur the lines between sky and silence, witness and wonder. On Christmas Day, 1964, a growing hush lingered over the frosted lanes of Warminster as families settled in after their holiday meals. The daylight was fading, cool and quiet, when a sound broke the calm. A noise so odd that it didn't fit any known pattern of nature or human industry. Locals described it in perplexing, almost breathless ways. A loud crackling, a metallic roar, something that seemed to buzz and shudder through the air before dropping away into silence. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't an engine, it was something different, something hard to place. And that was where it began. Not with a flash in the sky, not with a blink of light, but with sound. In those first moments, people in Warminster didn't know what to make of it. But by the winter of 1965, those sounds had become part of a pattern, a sequence of unexplained phenomena that would come to be known across Britain as the Warminster Mystery. I want you to picture Warminster in your mind, a quiet market town surrounded by gentle hills, distant sheep grazing in fields that roll toward the horizon, friendly faces, tea shops, the everyday rhythms of English life. This was not a place of secret launch bases or deep scientific labs, yet it was here that residents began reporting mysteries plain enough to be heard, seen, and felt. After that first Christmas Day event, similar sounds were heard night after night. People would step outside into cold darkness, clouds of breath trailing in the air, straining to catch the noise again, that same crackle, that vibrational pulse that seemed to stretch across the countryside. And then the lights came. At first, it was just odd reports, a flicker in the sky, a glowing orb that hung low over fields. One by one, people started to talk about it. A woman on Westbury Hill described a bright white light moving without sound across the night sky. A farmer near Cradle Hill said he watched a disc-shaped object hover silently above his barn before darting away at incredible speed. These were not isolated sightings. Dozens of people claimed they saw something unusual, something unexplainable. Entire groups reported watching luminous shapes wheel and hover, shapes that moved with an intelligence that defied ordinary explanation. It wasn't long before curiosity turned into conversation, and conversation turned into news. One of the first to take notice was Arthur Shuttlewood, a local journalist who began collecting accounts from residents who came forward with their experiences. Shuttlewood was meticulous, respectful, and determined to document what people were reporting without dismissing them out of hand. He wrote down every testimony he could verify, every description of light or sound that couldn't be chalked up to aircraft or headlights. He heard from farmers, shopkeepers, housewives, factory workers, ordinary people with nothing to gain from talking about something so strange. Shuttlewood's work soon drew the attention of national newspapers. By 1966, stories about mysterious lights and baffling sounds in Warminster were running in papers across the UK. Scientists and skeptics weighed in. Some suggested atmospheric conditions, unusual weather patterns, or misidentified aircraft. Others offered theories involving secret military maneuvers on nearby Salisbury Plain, where training exercises were common. But none of these explanations quite fit what people were describing. The sounds weren't explosions, they weren't consistent with jet engines, and the lights, bright, fast, sometimes silent, were unlike anything expected from routine military tests. In 1967, Shuttlewood published his book, The Warminster Mystery, gathering dozens of first-hand accounts into one place for the first time. The book became a record and a spark, fueling public interest and debate. People began visiting Warminster, walking its lanes after dark, hoping to witness some fragment of the phenomena themselves. Some left disappointed, others swore they heard the crackling sound or saw lights that danced across the horizon like silent fireflies. One witness, a retired schoolteacher who preferred to remain anonymous, told Shuttlewood she once watched a ring of white lights hover over a nearby field for nearly 20 minutes before vanishing, not fading, but simply gone. She said it felt like the earth itself held its breath in that moment, as though the air had gone still in silent recognition of something beyond normal understanding. Another account came from a group of youths who were out for a late-night walk. They spoke of a low humming that rose and fell in pitch, accompanied by a strange vibrational sensation in their chest, like a distant engine idling under the earth. They fled, frightened, convinced that whatever it was had followed them, that it lingered in the darkness beyond the street lamps. Skeptics were quick to counter. They pointed out that rural areas often have unexplained acoustic phenomena caused by atmospheric ducting, a condition where sound from distant sources travels unusually far. They noted that the proximity of military ranges could explain some sightings. They suggested that misinterpretation and suggestion could account for some reports, especially once the idea of a mystery took hold in the public mind. And yet, there were enough reports from enough credible individuals that something compelling was happening over those fields and hills. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Warminster mystery evolved from a cluster of unexplained noises and lights into a curious legend, one that drew UFO enthusiasts, researchers, and the merely curious. Some spent nights in fields with cameras and notebooks. Others shared stories in the local pub, their voices low and earnest. But as quickly as the phenomena had peaked, it began to fade. Reports became less frequent. The frenzy cooled. The sounds and lights, once almost nightly companions, receded into memory. By the mid-1970s, Warminster had returned to its ordinary rhythms. Shops opened, buses rumbled through towns, school children laughed in the playgrounds, unaware of the strange chapter that had once made their hometown a topic of national fascination. Yet the mystery never fully disappeared. In the decades since, Warminster has been cited in books, documentaries, and UFO archives. Pilgrimages still occur on anniversaries of the first strange sounds. Locals sometimes tell visitors with a wry smile that the sky over Warminster has its moods, and every so often, someone claims to see a light where none should be, a flicker that doesn't match any aircraft on the radar. What was it, really? A convergence of atmospheric quirks and misperceptions? A series of unrelated natural phenomena that happen to cluster in time and place? Or something more? Something that defies conventional explanation? There is no definitive answer. The scientific community demands evidence, clear, measurable, repeatable. And for all the testimony and photographs and newspaper accounts, such evidence remains elusive. But for the people of Warminster, those who heard the first strange crackle on Christmas night, those who watched silent lights dance over the fields, those who felt something in the vibration of the air, the memory of that winter in 1964 is more than folklore. It's a reminder that the world still holds corners of mystery, that human perception sometimes reaches beyond the boundaries of what we think we understand. And perhaps somewhere between the hills of Wiltshire and the quiet stars overhead, a question still lingers. A question without answer, but heavy with possibility. What if the sky still has secrets to share? What if Warminster's mystery isn't gone at all, but waiting for someone else to listen? Across these accounts, details differ, interpretations vary, and certainty remains elusive. Taken together, they form a pattern that has repeated for decades. Experiences reported by ordinary people, connected not by proof, but by the enduring mystery that surrounds them.